carbon footprint released into the atmosphere is one of the toughest challenges that the future of mankind is facing. Due to the rise of technology, new shopping and spending habits has emerged in the recent years. In order to investigate this, we have collected actual data that is obtained from UTM students and local family households in Malaysia.
Our objectives for this stage are to carry out a detailed audit of all the goods and purchases made by a group of UTM students and a group of Malaysian family households in 1 week. And then to calculate the total carbon footprint produced by all these purchases, and then to analyze these data and then benchmark them to data from Malaysia as well as other countries, and then to present this whole study in a proper scientific manner.
Thus, goods and purchases defined as how people spend their time, what they consider important in their environment, what they think about themselves and world surrounding. So, factors that influence consumers' purchasing decision is individual decision making, cultural orientation, social classes, and cultural factor. For carbon footprint calculation, firstly we need to decide scopes and boundaries. Then we can use formula from GHG protocol, or we can use factors, or we can use carbon footprint calculator. For data collection and analysis, we have two types of data, quantitative data and qualitative data. It helps us to identify the problems, create new idea, and make decisions. Scientific manner is our method conforms with the scientific principles. The scientific reports should include the goals of experiment, how the team performed, the experiment, and the results obtained.
We had gathered statistical data of CO2 emission embedded in consumer activities from each country, which can be seen in this table. We can see that Malaysia and Thailand, both being ASEAN countries, do have similar number of CO2 emission. However, to benchmark between these countries, we have to divide the data by the country's population.
For Malaysia, we predicted that a student who is living with their family will have an average emission from consumerism expenses higher than those who are living by themselves. With the use of proportionality of consumer expenditure and carbon footprint, we will calculate the average carbon footprint of each survey participant. We expect that our findings will closely align with the average carbon footprint of Malaysia.
After conducting the studies, we have discovered that USA produces enormous amount of CO2, 18 tons per person per year, and the highest compared to the other 5 countries. We came to know that the reason behind this huge CO2 emission is because USA relies more on transportation. Malaysia and Thailand share similarities in terms of their CO2 emission per dollar. But when it comes to CO2 emission per capita, Malaysia is greater than Thailand. Russia comes in the second place on the list, and Sweden comes right after Malaysia, followed by China, which means Thailand produces less CO2 per capita in our list. We found that, based on our results, we found that purchasing an electronic device could raise the CO2 emission to a greater extent. As based on our results, one of the students has purchased an electronic device within the week, and that has raised the CO2 emission to a greater extent. But in normal scenarios, we would see that food produces the most CO2 out of all.
The data that we have collected during the week neither confirms or denies with our hypothesis. Due to the diversity of our focus group, we can see that 2 students who live in their family, who are student B and Khairunisa, even if we exclude her laptop purchase during that week, the results still show a higher number in emission than Sulaiman. We predict that it was because they live in a large city compared to the others. But for student A and me, however, they show a clear result that they produce less CO2 than Sulaiman and Allah, who live alone.
In conclusion, we have found out that electronic products produce much more carbon footprint than food, but food is bought more frequently by UTM students and Malaysian families. So the carbon footprint produced by food was higher. So the best thing we can do is to try and reduce food waste. We also have deduced that Malaysia in general produces much more carbon footprint than countries like China, Sweden, and Thailand through excessive electricity usage, municipal waste, and privately owned cars. And that's it. Thank you for listening.